I found a hidden camera in my bedroom. When I checked the footage, I was horrified. I always felt like there was something off about my room, almost as if someone was watching me but would always brush it off, blaming it on the fact that my family had just moved into a new house. However, I was wrong, and I would soon discover the horrifying secret this house has been hiding. It all started when we heard a loud bang upstairs, followed by my dog Sasha growling and barking. She sounded absolutely ready to kill. It made everyone promptly freak out and rush upstairs only to find Sasha was directing her attack at something in my doorway. We turned the corner expecting to find a snake or maybe even an intruder, but instead we find nothing. Absolutely nothing. Thin air. We didn't know what to attribute the loud bang to, but my family preferred to just ignore that and call Sasha old and delusional. We had to rip her away from the doorway and shove her outside, and even then she clawed urgently at the door as if she felt the need to defend us from something. It scared me, but I avoided speaking up about it under the fear that my family would laugh at me and call me paranoid. This was the biggest mistake of my entire life. Flash forward to now. I'd just gotten home from school. The house was relatively empty as both parents were working and my siblings had sports practice. Sasha was sprawled out in the dirt under a tree, eyeing up the goats and wagging her tail when a baby goat sniffed her warily. I knocked on the screen door to grab her attention, not quite wanting to be alone in the house when I had a dog. Obediently, she sprinted towards the door and leaped through before making herself cozy on the cool tile in the kitchen. I'd already grabbed a Sprite from the refrigerator and was ready to throw myself down on the couch and turn on the TV when suddenly there was another loud bang. Sasha immediately jumped up and began growling, pointing her body like an arrow at the staircase as if it were prey. Naturally, I bounded over to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. Sasha beat me to investigating the situation as she promptly ran straight up the stairs and left me in the dust. Fearing the worst, I ran up after her. To my utter shock, she bounded right into my room and dove straight into the back end of my closet and began sniffing and snorting insistently on the wall behind my rack of clothes. I sighed. Okay, maybe a mouse in the wall or something is that I presumed. I walked up to where Sasha was snorting around and hesitantly pulled back the rack of clothes to reveal a square hole cut into the wallpaper. It was door-shaped and could fit an average person, but was short enough that said person would have to crawl to enter. I at first did not realize it was a door. It doesn't really look like one, rather just a perfectly aligned tear in the wallpaper. But upon running my fingers along it and force shoving one in, I found it flopped forward and fell to the floor with a heavy clap, a cutout of my wall. There was a light source from somewhere inside this crawl space, along with a ton of boxes which made no sense, and it seemed to be the only thing in there from my view. I would have never gone in there myself, but Sasha zipped right through when she realized I wasn't running away from it and began sniffing around in there. I tried calling her out, but she just looked at me over her shoulder like a disapproving mother-in-law and continued her quest for interesting scents. Feeling like she was never going to get out, I was faced with the reality that I'd have to crawl in and get her out myself, so I did. The room was so small that even at my short height I felt the ceiling brush my head every time I took a step. A few steps in, as I observed the stacks of cardboard boxes, I came across something, a blue sleeping bag. At first I froze, absolutely positive some psycho was right behind me and was going to clamp the hole shut and lock me in for all of eternity because I discovered their secret. But then I rationalized that maybe it was just more junk that happened to be spread out neatly on the floor coincidentally. So I worked up the courage to approach the sleeping bag. As more of it came into view, I noticed a small camera positioned neatly on top. Next to it was a jar of salted peanuts. I would have frozen up again, and I did, but much more briefly this time as I'd already given myself enough scares for it to get old. I crouched down and picked up the video camera. It was an old-style one, the one that had a little flip-out viewing screen. It turned on and had a nearly full battery percentage. Just then, I heard the front door slam and immediately bolted out of the room, camera in hand. It turned out it was just my mom, so I immediately ran down to explain what happened desperately. She at first was skeptic, rolling her eyes and throwing around the word really a few times, before finally becoming convinced and following me up the stairs. When I presented to her the camera, my mom quickly said we had to view what was on it, and hooked it up to our TV. The first tape was of some type of cameraman in a parking lot. He walks confidently into a supermarket and begins walking around, until suddenly he aims his camera up and zooms in on a cluster of people. It's unclear what he's focusing on until an elderly couple come into view. I recognize them immediately. They're the couple that lived on the property before we moved in. The cameraman keeps his camera aimed on them for the rest of the video. He moves with them, keeping a safe distance, but he never loses sight of them. He follows them through the whole store and peeks over aisles to get shots of them. Abruptly, the camera turns around to a store employee who taps the cameraman's shoulder angrily and inquires on what exactly he is filming. The next is the first absolutely alarming tape. It starts out with the camera pointed downwards, shaking as the man walks. It's nighttime and it's very obviously the side of our house. The cameraman stops as he reaches the kitchen window and aims his camera right through the window pane, where the couple are playing music loudly and sipping wine happily. They begin to playfully dance with each other as the old man talks about moving up towards Canada. For the next 5 clips, it's just the cameraman spying on them, in dental appointments from their backyard. And at one point, the cameraman slips through the door when it's left unlocked and he begins poking around their items. In one clip, the first thing seen is the front of the house, the man waiting with a ragged breath in presumably a bush. It's nighttime and he's very obviously excited for something. For the first time, we hear him talk as he whispers, "Come on," urgently. It's unclear what exactly he's waiting for until the old couple come outside to their lawn. The cameraman jumps up from a crouching position then, but then the couple is joined by 3 other people. They're all carrying drinks and settle themselves in lawn chairs, clearly planning on spending the rest of the night lounging about outside. The cameraman practically slumps and sits down again. He watches them for 10 minutes until his camera points downwards. He has a gun laying neatly in his lap. The last clip the cameraman has of the couple is when they're moving. The final moving trucks come to get the last of their furniture, and the clip pretty much consists of the couple standing around outside complaining about how hot it is and barking orders at movers. The next clip is of a real estate agent. I recognize her immediately too. She is the one who sold us the property. She's walking around confidently, surveying the stables and the exterior of the house. She opens her cell phone and makes a call to somebody about how dingy the place is and how she'll never sell the dump without some major flipping, and looks pleased when it seems she wins an argument. She then leaves and the clip ends. The next clip is of me. This time it's positioned from inside the room. The cutout door is obviously taken away and the cameraman pokes his camera lens through my rack of clothes discreetly to film me. I'm walking around angrily, arguing on the phone with my dad about how he never comes straight home when he gets back in town. I remember that day clearly. I finally hung up on my dad and threw the phone on my bed before walking out. The clip ends. The next clip is of that day that Sasha freaked out. The cameraman is positioned at the top of the stairs, lying down and trying his best to discreetly film us through the railing. Sasha is lying down on the floor boredly. The cameraman zooms in on her, then back out on the rest of the family. He seems to zoom in on everything. The food, each of our faces, and even at one point on my mom's behind. This goes on for an agonizingly long time before he suddenly accidentally drops his camera on the next step, creating the loud bang we heard. Even dropped, the camera still records Sasha jumping up and racing up to the noise. The cameraman scurries to collect his camera and all about throws himself through my closet and into the room. Sasha follows him straight in, barking and growling angrily. He tries to wave her away, but she merely snarls at him and tries to snap at his hand. With no choice left, he turns and grabs a small elephant figurine lying in a box and throws it at her. It hits her forehead and is enough to scare her into backing out of the room, but she still barks insistently at the doorway. The figurine slides under my dresser, and when the cameraman hears us clambering up the stairs, he plugs the hole with the cutout and waits with a ragged breath. Our muffled voices, concerned and confused, are heard in the room. The cameraman listens until we shrug and drag her back down the stairs. The clip then ends. It's not the last clip. There's tons more with plenty of recent dates, but we don't bother to watch them. My mom called the police a while ago and a bunch of cop cars came. I've been frozen in the corner for hours as the cops questioned everyone. My siblings came home and were pretty angry at the sight of police and accused me and my mom of overreacting, but I hardly care if they understand. I'm still trying to process everything myself. I'm just trying to understand what caused the bang that made me find the room in the first place.